In today's video, I'll talk about top 7 brand new Linux distros for 2021 and 2022. Myself Mohammad Zubair, and this channel is all about showing you how to become a highly paid IT pro really fast. So without any further ado, let's get started. Number 1. Deepin. Deepin is the top Linux distribution from China and it is based on Debian. This distro has its own desktop environment which is known as DDE, and that is very clean, sleek, well polished and well thought out. This Linux distribution has a lot of similarities with Mac operating system, but it is much more flexible. As you can see, the interface is pretty similar to the Mac operating system. You have a significant number of wallpapers and some theme to choose from. As you can see, we have a lot of wallpapers and screensavers that we can choose and select for our desktop. Same goes for theme. We have 3 themes available in Deepin. And with themes, we have a lot of customization that we can perform in terms of the user interface of this beautiful Linux distribution. The minimum space that you require to install this Linux distribution is about 25 gigabytes. Now let's see some of the defaults application in Deepin Linux. We have browser, we have App Store to download and install different softwares and application into Deepin Linux. Then for images, we have image viewer, and then we have many other applications. If you just click on all categories, it will open the categories in your Deepin Linux. So in terms of internet, we have browsers, we have mail, we have downloader, and if I go back, we have music, video, graphics, and many other categories. We also have some of the games available. So I will just click here. So we have these 2 games available in here. This Linux distribution is ideal for the developers and general users as well. You can download the needed tools and softwares for the development, and as it is based on Debian, you can use the apt environment to download different tools, libraries, softwares and packages in this distribution. And if you are a gamer, you can consider this distro as it allows you to download different games from the App Store. Some of you might be surprised to know that we have Steam available in Deepin Linux. So just search for it and you will have your Steam ready to be downloaded and installed into your Deepin Linux. Now let's see how much system resources this Linux distribution uses. I will open my terminal and here I will just write top, and here we have all the information about the processes and the memory, or you can say the resources that are being used by each process. Here we have whole information about the resources being used at the moment. So it is using almost 804 megabytes of RAM. So it is not a lot of resources. So it means you can use this Linux distribution on your average systems as well, and you will enjoy using it with all the latest features and updates. Now let's see some of the system information. So here we have OS as Deepin 20.3, the host is VMware, kernel is 5.10, and for shell it is using 5.0.3 bash. Then we have some of the information related to icons, terminal, GPU, CPU, and at the end obviously we have the information about the memory. So that was all about the Deepin, and now let's move on to the second Linux distribution. Number 2, Fedora. Fedora is one of those Linux distributions that gets considered as one of the first choices for many Linux distribution users. This Linux distro is based on the Linux kernel and uses the GNOME desktop environment. One of the main things about Fedora is that it is one of few Linux distribution with GNOME 41. In this distribution, we have some of very new features that you might not see in every GNOME based distribution. So now we have power modes, and other than that we have one more new feature that is known as multitasking. So here we have a new section added into the setting of this Linux distribution named as multitasking. You can do a lot of new stuff with this new addition. Other than that, we have a new feature named as mobile networking. I'll just search here. So here we have mobile network. We can connect our mobile with Fedora and we can use 2G, 3G, 4G and 5G. But obviously we need to have a modem. Then we have a new app that is known as connection apps. This connection app lets you to connect with other systems remotely. And this is a very good addition in Fedora. Not only that, we have some of new updates in terms of the user interface of this beautiful Linux distribution as well. And now let's see how much resources this system uses. I will open my terminal and we have different utilities that we can use, but I'll use top. In terms of system resources, our system is using almost 1320 megabytes of RAM. Then we have all the information about processes and how much resources each process is using at the moment. And then we have the remaining memory here as well. This Linux distribution is pretty fine and works pretty well with almost every type of user, whether you are a gamer, developer, or you are an ordinary user. Download this one and you will enjoy this. Now let's see what are the default applications in this Linux distribution. So here we have whether this is a utility, then we have clock, maps, and in terms of our browser, we have Mozilla Firefox as a default web browser. Then for the documentation, we have LibreOffice. Other than that, we have some of the other utilities as well that we can use. Here we have some of the font setting that we can apply into Fedora. Then we have many other things. I will just get out of this, and here at the top you can see we have multiple desktops available. You can have as many desktops as you like in your Fedora, and obviously it will increase your productivity and your throughput. So before getting done with Fedora, let's see the information about this Linux distribution. We have a utility known as NeoFetch. So I will just use it. So here we have all the information about this Linux distribution. The operating system is Linux 35 and the desktop environment is GNOME 41, as here you can see. Then we have some of the themes, icons, terminal and other information about this Linux distribution. So this is the latest one and this one just got released in November. And the minimum space that you might need to install this Linux distribution is 20 gigabytes. And with that, we are done with Fedora. And now let's move on to the next one. Number 3, Pop OS. Pop OS is from the System 76 and it is based on Ubuntu and uses the apt environment to download and install different packages and softwares. It uses the GNOME desktop environment by default, but if you want to install some other desktop environment, you can do that easily. We have two versions of Pop OS. One is for the general users and second one is for the gamer, as it comes with NVIDIA settings as default. The minimum space that you require to install Pop OS is 16 gigabytes. We have the latest features in the Pop OS desktop environment, same as Fedora, because both uses the GNOME 41. Now let's see what are the defaults application in Pop OS. Well, here we have some of the categories. Now in terms of Office, we have LibreOffice as a default tool for our documentation. Then in terms of system, we have some of the tools that we can use. We have disk management, password and keys, startup application. It means you can prioritize which application to start with booting up your system. Then you have a lot of utilities that you can use in your Pop OS, and then we have some other applications. For example, in terms of browsers, we have Mozilla Firefox as a default web browser. Then to download and install different applications and software, we have Pop Shop here. So that was all about the default applications. I will open my terminal and let's see some other things. In terms of resource usages, Pop OS use almost same number of resources just like the Fedora. Here we have 1310 megabytes of RAM being used. In Fedora, we had 1320. Then again, we have same information about processes and the number of processes being used by each process here. And then we have the free memory in here and we have many other information in here. At the end, let's see some of the system information from Pop OS. So this is NeoFetch and here we have all the information about this Linux distribution. As you can see, we are using the latest version of Pop OS, which is 21.10. and then we have all the information related to this Linux distribution. Down here we have memory information, then we have GPU, CPU, terminal, and many other things. That was all about Pop OS. Let's move on to the next one. Number 4, MX Linux. MX Linux is another Linux distribution that is based on Debian, which further is based on Ubuntu. It is a mid-weight Linux distribution and uses the XFCE desktop environment. MX21 just got released on 21st October 2021 with all its latest updates and features. MX Linux is one of those distros that provides the extensive documentation. Its manual contains more than 200 pages and covers everything that a new user might ever need. The minimum space required to install this Linux distribution is about 6 GB. Now let's see some of the defaults application. So here we have all the application. So here we have some of the categories that we can go through. In terms of development, we get 2 applications by default. We get 4 games by default as pre-installed in it. Then we have some of the graphics tool. In terms of internet, we have Mozilla Firefox as a default web browser. And then for the emailing, we have Thunderbird as an email client. Then in terms of multimedia, we have huge number of applications that we can use for our different type of multimedia. So here you can see we have a lot of them. Then in terms of Office, we get LibreOffice as pre-installed, and then in terms of settings, we get different applications like we have Adblock, accessibility, appearance, Bluetooth, and many other things. And at last, we have system utilities in here that we can use, and we can customize them to have better performance from MX Linux. Now, let's see some of the system resource usages and some information about this system. So I will just search for terminal. And as this Linux distribution is using XFCE desktop environment, that is why terminal is called as XFCE terminal. So let's see some of the system resource usages. Well, this system is only using roughly 600 megabytes of RAM at the moment. And in terms of swappiness value, its system is also using none of them at the moment. And down here we have processes and the number of resources being used by each process, and we have many other information. We can conclude that this Linux distribution possesses all those latest features, updates, and application that we might need and require in any modern day Linux distribution. But this Linux distribution uses very less number of hardware resources, because if you remember, in terms of installing this Linux distribution, it only requires 6 GB of your space, and in terms of RAM, it is only using roughly 600 megabytes of your RAM. So if you have a laptop or machine with average hardware resources, you can consider this Linux distribution and install it, and you can enjoy all those latest features that you might see in modern day Linux distribution with all the heavy resources. So that was all about the MX Linux. Now let's move on to the next one. Number 5, Faren OS. This is British made Linux distribution and it is based on Ubuntu, and it uses the apt environment for downloading and installing different packages and softwares in the operating system. The latest version got released and has all the latest features and updates. Faren claims that this Linux distribution is maintenance free. It seems like that the developers have picked up different distributions and integrated them into one great Linux distribution. It uses the KDE desktop environment that gives this beautiful look and interface to this Linux distribution. The minimum space that you require to install this Linux distribution is about 20 GB. Let's see some of the default application. Well, in terms of graphics, we have 5 applications by default. Then in terms of internet, we have 6 of them available. Then in terms of multimedia, we get 2 of them. Well, the good news is we get VLC media player by default. In terms of Office, we get LibreOffice by default. Then we have some other utilities and application for system. Then we have some settings utilities. And at the end, we have a utility section. For example, we have calculator, maps, we have this, and we have many other things. Now let's see some of the system resource usages about this Linux distribution. So obviously we need to have terminal open for that purpose. I will just open it, Let's open our top, and at the moment this system is using almost 870 megabytes of RAM. Then we have all the processes that are running at the moment, and we have all the information about the number of resources being used by each process here. Then we have many other information like swappiness value, freed swappiness value, and freed RAM at the moment. So we can conclude from here that this Linux distribution is not using a lot of hardware resources because it only requires 20 gigabytes of your space to install, and it is using only 870 megabytes of your RAM. That shows that this Linux distribution is not heavy and is not as demanding as other Linux distribution, which are latest one in terms of hardware resources. So you can download this one, and I'm sure that you will find everything that you might need in any other modern day Linux based distribution. Now let's see some of the system information. Well, obviously we are using Faren OS in terms of operating system. Then in terms of its kernel, we are using the 5.11 generic version, which is a good news. Then in terms of shell, we are using 5.0.17 version of bash. Then we have all the information about themes, terminal font. Then we have all the information about themes, CPU, GPU, and memory. At the end, I want to talk to you about some of the wallpapers and themes that are available and this Linux distribution offer. So we just need to open our setting, and then we'll be able to do a lot of settings and customizations in terms of desktop and themes. So here we have 3 themes that we can choose and apply onto this Linux distribution, and then we have many other settings related to our interface and desktop environments. Here we have workspace behavior, Windows management, and we have many other things under the personalization section. So download this one, and I'm sure that you will love this one. That was all about it. Number 6. Zorin OS. Zorin OS claimed to replace Windows and Mac OS, and this Linux distribution gets shipped with the Genome 3 desktop environment. Zorin offers a Windows 10, 7 and Chrome OS inspired user experience in the free core version, and we need to download its paid version for Mac OS, Mate or Ubuntu Look. Other than Genome, you can also have the XFCE desktop environment in this Linux distribution. This distribution is one of the most beautiful Linux distribution that you can find. The interface is very good looking and the desktop is very clean. Other than that, this Linux distribution allows you to do a lot of customization in terms of user interface and having different backgrounds and choosing different themes. Zorin is one distro that allows you to customize the system interface and layout. The application launcher is very clean, as you can see on your screen, and everything looks very composed. This distribution is equally suitable for gamers and developers as well. So let's open its software center and let's see what do we have there. So here we have different applications in software center, and at the bottom we have different categories of application. So just go to that category and you will find every application that is available in this Linux distribution related to that category. And if you do not know how to use your terminal because Linux distribution uses the terminal, do not worry, because a lot of functions and tools are accessible from the settings of the GUI of the system. So just click here and just start typing for any application. I'm just going to type here terminal, and here you can see I have just written half of the name, and here we have terminal. So IntelliSense is very good. Now let's see how much resources this system possesses and how much it uses. So I will just cite here top, and here we have information about system resources being used at the moment. At the moment, this system is using almost 1073 megabytes of RAM, and then we have all the information about processes and the resource being used by each process. Then we have some of the swappiness value information and many other things. And now let's see some of the system information. So in terms of version of this operating system, we are using Zorin OS 16 version. Then in terms of desktop environment, we are using Genome at this moment. Then we have other information about kernel. Then we have shell, which is 5.0.17 version. Then we have other information about terminal, CPU, GPU, and memory usages. That was all about this beautiful Linux distribution, and now let's move on to the last Linux distribution for today's video. Number 7. Garuda. Garuda Linux entered the world of Linux distribution with an excellent interface and outstanding design. This Linux distribution is based on Arch Linux, and Garuda Linux comes with various desktop environments like KDE, XFCE, GNOME, LXQT Quinn, Wayfire, Qtile, etc. And it is a rolling release distribution, which gives distribution the latest software updates and all the latest features. So this distribution aims to be user-friendly and focuses on ease of use and performance. Garuda Linux will always remain free. Garuda Linux is best known for gamers, as you might have gotten the idea by how it looks like. If you click on this application launcher button, you will get everything looking like game icons. Because Garuda is best known for gamers, this Linux distribution has a separate utility known as Garuda Gamer. I will just search for it. So here we have Garuda Gamer. This tool or this utility gets used for gaming purpose, and it's a very compelling one. As you can see, you can select your Steam native, then you have Wine, then you have Proton, and you have many other things that you can download with single click. So this is a really powerful one in terms of gaming. So if you are a gamer, I'm sure you will consider Garuda at least once. Just like Deepin Linux, Garuda also has Mac operating system like theme. And the thing that makes this distribution a gorgeous one is the use of neon icons, as you can see at the bottom of your screen. The good thing about this distribution is we do not get many applications as pre-installed. I'll show you there. If I go to my all applications, we do not get a lot of applications as pre-installed, and that's a good thing about this one, because a lot of gamers do not like to have many things as pre-installed in their system because they want to customize it and they only want to keep those things in their system as per their liking and as per their needs. In case if you want to download and install this Linux distribution, you will require at least 30 gigabytes of space in your system. And that was all about the Garuda Linux. So with that, we are done with all the 7 brand new Linux distributions for 2021 and 2022. And I hope that you must have liked a lot of them. Please leave a like, subscribe, and press the bell icon. We'll see you in the next video. Till then, take care.